favorite reality podcast with Michael and Teresa. Today we're talking Survivor Australia, Brains vs. Brawn 2. This is going to be the whole week, so the grand finale 2 episodes, from episode 23 to 24. For anyone who hasn't watched the show, we're gonna tell you who the winner is. In today's episode, Miles wins the Sole Survivor. We go over his hero arc and gameplay this season. And if Miles is the Rat King, then shall we call the final 3 boys the Musketeers? Lastly, Kaelin versus Miles. We review their jury pitches and what worked and what didn't. If you've missed the 2 episodes, you can catch all the action on 10play, Survivor Australia, Brains vs. Brawn 2, final 2 episodes 23 to 24, breakdown coming up.
Yay, Miles!
Yay! Congratulations, Miles! We are so proud of you.
You did it. You proved them wrong. You climbed the mountain. Underdog story, epic finale.
Yeah.
I am so satisfied with this finish. I would have been satisfied with any of the 3, but
Yeah.
I am delighted by this final result.
And hasn't he just had the most incredible journey from beginning to end? I mean,
Yeah.
he started playing from the bottom for so long, went briefly to the top, kind of got a little bit cocky, and then after that, like, came crashing down to the bottom again, and then, like, it's like a David versus Goliath story, really.
Yeah, it was very sweet to see his humility and self-awareness throughout his journey. He acknowledged his flaws. He didn't go through it in complete denial. He came through it with, or hubris, he came through it with, as a better person almost. Do you know what I mean? And us liking him more. I didn't connect with him at first. I recall being a bit put off by his affrontness and his... Like, I can see maybe why he rubbed a lot of people wrong on the tribe. Say, Max and Ken. They were like, oh, this guy, he just talks strat. It's like someone at work who always talks work.
Yeah. And it feels like maybe there's no real connection there. I think Ken was like saying that this guy, Miles, has got no emotional EQ. I know.
Sorry, the dog is going nuts. Shut up.
It's breakfast time over here, so yeah, he's just very eager to go get fed.
But he grew from it, and he grew on us, and his story was amazing. He was entertaining. He was funny. He brought the excitement the season needed. He, along with his 2 guys, AJ and Kaelin, they're a group package for me.
And it's such a great final 3. Honestly, I don't think we've actually seen a final 3 like this.
No.
Where all the contestants. So this is like the first time I think. Like we've had 3 boys. But they're all very nice guys. Like, seriously, it just made me. Restore like my faith in like reality TV, you know, like men, because a lot of times I think on TV especially, sometimes you get maybe people who are quite cocky, who want to be very alpha males. I mean, we've seen like, say, Lockie, you know, like,
sort of toxic, a little bit toxic masculinity, a little bit maybe. But not these 3.
Yeah.
These are 3 sweethearts.
They are. I mean, look at
guys.
the final challenge. I mean, they brought along their best friends and their mom. I mean, who does
young
that?
men.
But would you bring your mom? Like, you know,
No,
if you
I mean,
were going to like final
men of a
challenge.
certain age, right? Like the people they brought, they didn't have wives or families yet. So who do they bring? Their housemates and their mothers. It was very sweet.
It was very sweet, and just the way I think that they have been supporting each other. They've been like competitive, but they've also been very good sports about it.
Yeah.
They haven't like, you know, like really put each other down.
No.
They have been like it's just great. Like just
And also the way they treated the women on the tribe too was very respectful, even though they eliminated all of them.
Yeah.
They treated everyone with respect. They were polite. They weren't mean or saying nasty things about any of the other tribe mates. They played a very respectful game and a good game. Entertaining too.
But respectful.
Yeah. So Miles, he did it. I have to take back my word. At the beginning of the season, I looked at him and I made my first impressions of the cast, and I was like, you know what? Why can't we get a different representation of the Asian male? Why can't we get someone who isn't nerdy, cliche, the IT guy stereotype, financial analyst? Why can't we get a different representation, something more diverse and that expands what we think of Asian males? I take it all back. I was wrong. Miles, you're more all that and more.
Yeah.
He's the full package. He is, okay, he's not Yul Kwan. He's not a chiseled, Korean god.
Well, no one is, but majority of like I think
people, yeah.
of people,
But
probably fall more into the Miles category.
Yeah, but he is. He's intellectual, he's physical, he's funny, he's smart, he's all that, and we saw that come to light in his journey. He's a full human being, and we got to see that, as we all are, but we don't often get to see that with different types of representation. So to see him represented as courageous at the top, at the bottom, a leader, a follower, all these different roles that you play in Survivor, was really good.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like it also talks to like how you can get a first impression of someone and maybe it might not be favorable, but actually once you actually get to know them, like say in Survivor, we've really got to know Miles, like, what are his flaws, what are his successes, the way he plays. And then you realize like that's what it is. First impressions are just that.
Yeah.
There's a lot more, something that's a lot deeper down that maybe a lot of us, we sometimes like forget to discover.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think the journey of the audience is the same journey that the rest of the tribe took. Like, I think many of the tribe members, the Kents, the Maxes and so on, the Riches and so on, they had this first impression of him that was annoying, but then he grew on them.
Yeah.
He grew on them and he grew on us as well as audience members. Like, at first he was grating, he was that guy, but then you felt pity for him, and then you saw his humor, how funny he was, and how likable he was, and he also grew too. So it's a really fully developed season. I'm really satisfied with the storytelling of the season.
Yeah.
This is where Australian Survivor really thrives, in telling a really complex human story.
Yes.
It did it fantastically.
Yeah. And I think especially with Miles, I felt like the story of him, from the hero arc, like, from the bottom to the top, like the jungle rat to Rat King, and then to like coming to the bottom to getting yelled at by everyone. It's a very, very complete story. And he was also very much able to own it at jury, during the jury pitch as well, which I feel is very important.
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we start Let's get into it. So we're going to start off with episode 23. So this is where the postgraduates, the final four of Zara, AJ, Kaelin, and Miles, they are the final four on the island. They had just voted out Kate, and that was deemed a power move by Zara.
It sure was. She wasted no time coming back to the beach and telling everyone what a move it was, why it was such a good move, and why they all owed her now. I thought this was... Look, I understand why she needed to flex the move, because maybe she's been feeling like she hasn't had her... This was her best move.
Yeah.
It was a big moment. But I think now she stuck herself out as a target, and she underestimated the AJ-Kaelin relationship, how strong it was, and it was never going to get broken, even if she did save AJ. And also it turned off Miles, I think, from working with her on the next vote. It made things very clear that she was now a massive target.
Yeah, I think so. And I think for Miles, it would have been very hard for him to trust her, even though she probably had every intention of taking him to the end. But when you kind of like betray someone's trust like that, it takes a while to rebuild it. I don't think you can really expect for it to just go back to where you kind of like started. Yeah. I'm going to say, like, I think when she had that big, like, on the beach, after they had just voted out Kate, and she was elated, and she's like, yeah, you boys, like, AJ, Kaelin, I've saved you too, so, like, hopefully this will be something that, you pay me back. I really had to do this. I knew what everyone's move is. I actually, to be honest, when I saw that, I actually thought, I think that she might actually get voted out next. Yeah. Just because I think... Sometimes I feel like with the episodes, like, with who they portray in the beginning, it kind of like sets off the story of what the episode is going to be. Sure. And they've kind of like put this like, this, I guess this version of Zara, that's cocky, that's, that's bashful.
Authoritative.
that's authoritative and, that's not very self-aware in the way that she's kind of like handling herself, because the boys are kind of like sucking up to her, I feel. And, she's kind of like a little bit blind about it, and it's kind of like almost setting her up for failure.
Mama Z.
Yeah.
Mama Z didn't see how her young boys chicklings were conspiring on her. Yeah, I think, this was a good move again. But
was it a great move? Like, it's a good move,
it's
but
an okay
that's
move.
it. I know AJ has said, this is like one of the top 3 moves. I'm like, no way.
A great move is when you block a lot of votes and you blindside the majority of the tribe. I think she took advantage of the confusion and her immunity to make a choice. The big move was to get rid of AJ, but to somehow claim credit for it. That would have been the big move, I feel, because the obvious target was always Kate. It just wasn't the intended target, but it was the obvious target because she was outside of their alliance. So really, she did the predictable move. What would have been great is if she killed AJ, then she has Kate as
as
a
an
number,
ally.
an ally.
Yeah.
She then takes out Miles or Kaelin. It doesn't really matter because I think Zara was in a very good position to go far. I think there's a world, a multi-universe where she could have won if she goes with maybe Kaelin or Kate to the final 2.
Yeah.
Maybe. But she, instead of seeing Kate as a potential GOAT, she saw her as her biggest enemy. And I always thought that was a mistake. I always thought that Kate was a potential powerful ally.
Yeah.
And someone who didn't quite have the resume that Zara had. So I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe...
But let's talk about... Sorry, you were saying more about that?
Yeah, so I think I just want to maybe... kind of like just clarify more on like why I think Zara's vote, like, it's good, like, because in the end she didn't have to actually convince anyone or manipulate anyone to like shift their vote. She basically just took in all the information, which she was going to get anyway, because this is what happens when you win immunity. Everyone comes to you and tells you what their pitches are, so you just sit back and listen, and then after that you decide with your vote, like, what you're gonna do. So that's all she did. There was no manipulation, there was no going behind the scenes to like, oh hey, I think we should change this to that, and so it's like it's a good move. Like, Miles got blindsided, but was it a great move? I don't think so.
Yeah, it got awkward between AJ and Miles though. AJ really I feel like AJ this is how he talks to maybe girlfriends before a breakup or something like that. It was, shall we say, passive aggressive.
I think he was hurt,
Of course he was hurt. But
he's
very, he can be quite, and I don't mean this in a bad way, okay, AJ, but he can say words that seem kind, but actually quite cutting.
Like passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive, and it could seem like, oh, I'm trying to help you, but he's very masterful at putting in those little jabs and jibes in there, that wound. Yeah. In the middle of a compliment, like, I just don't understand it. It was such a childish, weak, insecure move. Now they see you like a child, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Do you, man?
Like condescending.
Condescending. I think he's very clever with his language, and I see it throughout this episode with he, and the next 2 episodes with he and Kaelin, that I hadn't been seen before.
Well, do you think the others kind of like know this as well?
Yeah.
Like, because
he's a sweet talker. He's been able to sweet talk, Kate, Morgan, but also you can see how deadly a tongue he has, a deadly a speaker he is as well, because he can really, even we'll get to this, but he even sweet talks Kaelin's mum. Yeah. But it can come across as sometimes disingenuous, but also dangerous, where I can see now people are like, I can't take this guy to the final 2. He's gonna, he has the power to either put off or put on a lot of people with his words.
I think so. Like, say at the final challenge when he's kind of like sweet talking Kaelin's mom, and then the Miles had dropped out, and then it was just him and Kaelin vying for the final immunity, and he was like telling Kaelin, it's okay if you want to drop out now. I'm still going to take you, and then you can take me. And then Kaelin was just like looking at him, and then it's like, what? I'm just going to concentrate on surviving this immunity.
Yeah, we'll get to that. It seemed like a little bit like the snake's pitch in the Garden of Eden. You know what I mean? Like, just eat that apple. It's all good. It's all good, bro. I'll take you to the final 2, Eve.
You and me will get rid of Adam.
We'll get rid of Adam. I got you. It was a bit like the snake's pitch. Okay. It you know what it reminded me of? AJ talking to Miles reminded me of Ali talking to AJ earlier in this season. It was a little bit
it was a little
lacking
bit like that,
in self-awareness, but then again, he would have been so charged emotionally and so pissed, to be honest. But he always has this facade of being cool, calm, collected, which he is. Props to that because he's a poker player. But like, it just came off a little like heated, and I thought both. It was a very interesting dynamic.
Well, do you think it would have been better if he had just kind of maybe went off at Miles properly?
I think it would have been better for his soul. Yeah. I think it would
Like
have
say,
been better
okay,
for
like,
his
like,
soul.
like say if he went off at Miles the way...
How could you hurt me like this, man?
like if he went off at Miles the way, like, say, Logan or Zara had kind of like, you know,
Yeah,
like you know,
just
like,
let it
AJ,
out.
you burn me, I would never ever, like, you know,
That's sometimes more therapeutic than saying, I just don't understand the logic of it. Are you stupid? Are you logical? The logic is, AJ, you're the biggest player in the game. Threat to him. You share the same moves. He's going to cut you when he can cut you. If he doesn't cut you then, what happens is he leaves it to Kaelin and a challenge, you know, for you to get rid of. But I think that's what AJ is so good at. He can make people feel like a good move is stupid. You know, that's the manipulation that he's so good at, because he can twist it around. Would have been a good move if Miles pulled it off.
of course.
But
it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, and now AJ can make him feel very small and very stupid. Like I said, like an ex-girlfriend.
I feel like sometimes, I mean, like, you know, I feel like I sometimes like have this attribute where like I cannot fully express my anger or resentment or like, you know, and I'm like, I have to. Okay.
Shall we get back to the podcast now? Jesus. Okay. Delete. Okay, I just don't know if I can do it, he says. I don't want to think about it, he says to Miles, talking about Kaelin. So, you know.
Oh, so this is when Zara was sitting
next to him,
AJ. With AJ and asking if he can actually vote Kaelin.
Yeah, can you do it? That's a hint to, you know, Zara that, this ain't going to happen. You better win immunity tomorrow. Because this guy is not going to ever cut his BFF.
And so we get to the immunity challenge. And it was a really, really good challenge. Like, you know, like I think Miles had an early head start. I like it that it was in different parts. So I think these are the challenges that I really like, where you've got several components. You've got like something that's a bit more physical, you know, something that uses more like mental strategy, and then something like, you know, with like balance and kind of like endurance in a way.
Yeah, I like the ones
Patience.
that end with patience and puzzle solving and mental ability.
Yeah.
That really contradict just brawn and brute strength.
And also
and
because
a contrast to it.
I feel like in the beginning of these challenges, you're kind of like your heart is racing. There's so much adrenaline. You're just racing to be the fastest person on the obstacle course. But towards the end, it's almost like you have to slow yourself down. And like, you know, and it takes a lot of mental fortitude, I feel, to do that, to be like, oh my God, because you're probably like all nerves and you're like, oh, I got to try and balance the ball in like a little divot.
Yeah. It reminds me of in basketball, you're playing basketball and then suddenly you get a foul and then you have to shoot a free throw under pressure, and it's a very big contrast in the gameplay. So you go from high action to just the most still thing, or like a golf putt where you just have to focus amidst a lot of noise. And you often see who has the mental focus in those moments, and I really enjoy that. So Miles pulls it out.
Like at the time when he actually really needed it most.
I was cheering.
Yeah.
Things went his way so much these last two episodes, and as they often do, like, as I said, in a multi-universe, AJ wins this, Kaelin wins this, and Miles goes home here for sure.
Yeah.
I think he needed this one.
He definitely...
Did he need this one?
Yeah, I think definitely if he didn't win, AJ and Kaelin would have targeted him.
Yeah.
I mean, Kaelin will probably be the next one who would have won it, so Miles would probably be the next to go, you know? Yeah.
And so now the target is on Kaelin or Zara. I think AJ feels safe at this point because he has Kaelin's vote. He and Kaelin are going to vote together. He says he and Kaelin are going to vote together no matter what. So basically the best result for Zara is a possible fire-making challenge.
I think that was against AJ, not Kaelin, though.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, because Kaelin's very good at fire. So I think, you know,
right.
if they went to fire, they would have won at AJ. And AJ doesn't really know how to make fire. Okay, so back to
what
this whole,
are these people
like...
doing?
Yeah, I was like, what have you been doing during, like, the 40... You know, the 40 plus
It's
days.
like, you know, can you make instant noodles? Oh, I don't understand. I would have thought if I'm on the show, right? If I get the call, hey, Michael, you get an email that says, do you want to be on the show? I'm like, yeah, all right, after I'm done with that.
The first few things you would need to learn.
Okay, get a gym membership, get into rip shape, right? And then make a fire is number one.
Yeah.
Number two, how to cut coconuts. Number three, how to fish, how to stand on little tiny pegs. Number four.
The tiny pegs are going to make me
things like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but making fire has to be the top three things you make pre... You know,
you have to learn that, and
you might have to call the fire department a few times to your apartment.
Like Janine Ellis, like I think in the previous Survivor, she hired a Navy SEAL to like train her. You know, like that's what an entrepreneur is. That's how you get to
resources.
No, of course she has the resources, but just the mindset to be like to anticipate what's going to come. I have to prepare myself if I actually want to go forward in this game. So she got a Navy SEAL to like train her in like doing exercises. I bet you she knows how to make fire. How to
she can make juices, she can make fire, she can make smoothies, she can make millions. Okay, so the pre-tribal is basically fire practice with these boys because as AJ pictures correctly, he and Kaelin are a solid two. They're not going to go against each other because AJ's logic is Kaelin is going to take me to the final two. He's counting on that, and Kaelin is the final three challenge beast because we often see at 4 is when the big threats get dropped off. 4 and 3 is where the big threats, the shields, get dropped off. And the physical threat often takes who they want at 3. Okay? And so AJ is banking on that meta, that convention. So it's interesting how now the strategy is to align yourself with the challenge beast at 3 and have them take you. Because we often see at this point, this is when the strategy masterminds fall. This is where the Georges, the Lukes, the Luke Tokis, the Harrys, these great players who never quite get to the final 2 pitch, they just can't get to that physical challenge to win it.
Yeah.
And so they don't have the self-agency to determine their own fate. That's why American Survivor and Australian Survivor in the past switched to a final 3 to somehow include them.
Yeah.
But the final 2 format seems to be better for me. But yeah, it's interesting how they're doing this.
So you prefer the final 2 because I feel like in this just for this season, I would have preferred a final 3 because I really would have liked to see Mal go up against AJ.
That would be cool.
I would have really liked to see. I feel like probably Miles and AJ are the strongest final 2.
Yeah.
So it would have been nice to see, especially AJ, like how he is going to
for sure.
pitch.
For most seasons, I think a final 2. For this one, a final 3 would have been a pro. So let's move on. Sorry, we have to move on a bit faster this episode because it's a work day. But okay, tribal. Zara pitches herself, but it's interesting because she didn't make herself less appealing. She was pitching herself, but in pitching herself, she made herself a bigger threat.
A bigger threat, I think
when
so.
At this point, you actually want to diminish yourself. As I was saying, you want to get taken.
Yeah.
So you actually have to say, take me, I'm not a threat to you.
Yeah. I actually think it was actually quite a big oversight on her part that she thinks that she was going to fire because when we were watching the episode before they got to tribal, I was actually thinking, Miles doesn't have to put her to fire. He can actually just vote her out.
It's better for him to vote her out because then he can credit another move.
Yeah, he can because the fact that Zara had pulled the wool over his eyes
doesn't owe her that
the
now.
previous episode.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like this would be his chance to kind of like redeem that arc and be like, okay, you pulled one over me, now I got one over you.
Yeah, he doesn't
I claim
owe
this
her
as
that.
my move. Yeah,
because
he doesn't
he's
need
not indebted to her. Because
No.
had she gone Kate, then yes, they're loyal to each other.
Sure.
But she betrayed his vote the last time, so he
Yeah.
can go this way. He's freer to go this way and burn her without potentially losing her confidence in a jury vote.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, it's fair play now.
Yeah, I thought it was just like she didn't even see. She just thought, okay, you know, we're gonna go to fire. I was like, but actually there are other options.
This was a cleaner kill.
Yeah.
And she seemed relieved by it, if I'm honest. She seemed relieved. She seemed very anxious about having to go to fire, which is what I sort of sensed in her when
were
we're
going to rocks.
we're going to go to rocks.
Yeah,
She was the best target for a rocks flip.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't want to leave anything to chance. She likes good numbers. She's a financial analyst like Miles is, or at least trained to be. So she likes logic. She likes big numbers. She likes stats that favor good results.
Well, then she should have learned to make fire. You really should have thought about that.
But let's talk about Zara's game quickly. I thought she had a very good line to the end.
Yeah.
Especially once Karen left the game, but she had a good story. If you think about it, that isn't too different from. It doesn't have the same flash as Miles.
Yes.
But she played from the bottom. She was at the bottom of Brawn. With Laura, she pissed off Laura. She had to mend that relationship.
Yeah.
She joined the Coven. She had a lot of great moves in the Coven. She then joined the postgraduates.
Yeah. So she was in quite a few good alliances.
Girls Gone
and I
Wild.
think especially was she in the? She was in Girls Gone Wild.
Was she in the berries? The land challenge.
I think that was Logan.
Oh yeah,
and
she didn't make the land.
Kirsten. Yeah, no,
she was on the other side, but she did good work with the tribe while the berries were together. She did good work with the boys that were left.
Yeah.
So she did some amazing work.
And she also
to rally her game.
her alliance with AJ and Miles
when Karen lost it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she really separated herself as a really good player, I thought, this season. Later on in the season. So credit to Zara. I think she's a very worthy Final fourthest, but
yeah, I think it was her time to go. It was her time to go. Yeah, it was her time to go.
But this three is the three we all wanted.
Yeah. So True? Before we go that, so when the votes were read out and it was revealed that Zara was the one going home. Okay, so Logan did this thing where she was like, tap tap tap. Oh, shame on them all.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of maybe a bit of talk in the jury villa that big boys club or something, right? And that jury villa is all girls and the final three is all boys and it's sexist. But girls, I don't know if I buy this narrative because
I don't.
You outnumber them by eight girls and one queer guy.
I was so annoyed when Logan did that because I was like, okay, if you look at all the people in the tribe and who are in jury, there's 7 girls
and Paulie.
And and Paulie, and then there's 3 boys, so it's 7 girls versus 4 boys. If you girls really feel like the boys are a threat, take them out. Join them together. But the fact is that the girls, they just kind of work in these pairs and they work against each other. I mean, even when even when they had the coven, they were still working against each other.
Oh yeah.
So and I don't know. In this case, I actually felt like the boys, they actually showed us, what it's actually like, to actually form a good alliance without actually betraying each other. Whereas the girls have just left, right, center. Betrayed each other. Zara with
it's
Laura.
High school.
When she burned her and used her advantage to get swapped to the other tribe.
Yeah.
Come on.
No comment.
Yeah.
No comment. Okay, so I think this final 3 is the best 3
that
could have made from this cast. Not just 3 fine young men players, but 3 fine young men. They represent the outplay, the outwit, the outlast.
Yeah.
In each of their gameplays, I was delighted to see this 3.
Yeah.
I was like, yes.
I think that was always the final 3 that I was hoping for. I think for me, I was hoping that all 3 of them would be able to pitch because I feel like it would have been a really great pitch. And True. I kind of thought that, maybe they were kind of ganging towards this finale anyway, where it's the 3 of them.
Yeah.
Miles kind of fell off from the plan a little bit, but in the end, we got what we wanted.
Yeah. So final challenge. The guys have to balance on bamboo sticks and basically damage themselves for 2 hours. What did you think of this challenge?
Well, the set was very pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it looked like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, so they pretty much, I feel like they have to enact a platform and then put these bamboos into the thing because you see Jonathan pull a lever and then one just comes out.
That
so there's some kind of
crazy.
Mechanic and they covered it with leaves so that you wouldn't be able to see the contraptions.
Yeah,
and then very nice.
and then they have to stand on them and just basically puncture themselves till pain. And then their friends come out. Let's talk about their friends. Their chosen. Okay, who's my chosen person to come out and visit me on the island? Is you. Yours is probably me. No, let's
you.
But these guys, they bring out 2 young. I mean, AJ is 35. you know, and he brings out his best mate. I feel like, you know, that's interesting. And then Miles brings out his best, predictable for a 22-year-old guy, because he's at that age where he doesn't want to bring out his mum, yet he doesn't have a girlfriend maybe.
Well, not Kaelin.
But
Kaelin's
not
secure
Kaelin.
enough to like bring his mum.
Not Kaelin. This is why we love Kaelin.
Oh, if I had a daughter, I'll be like, yeah, just marry Kaelin.
I know, right? Like, Kaelin, this is what I was getting to. Kaelin brings out his mum. Kaelin is the kind of guy that goes to a club and brings his mum. What a sweetheart.
Yeah.
What a sweetheart. This was so lovely. He brings out his mum. He's not unafraid to love her in front of everybody. About, you know, he's just such a good boy.
Oh, this is like, he's the son that every mother wants.
Yeah. And he's such a good kid. Like, he's so... Okay, so we get to the challenge, and they're standing on these pegs, and they're in a lot of pain, and AJ... He starts to, you know, whisper a few things, and he talks to Kaelin and his mum, and he's like, you know, AJ's like, your son, he's a remarkable human being, and he says the same thing about you, Mrs. Kaelin. I think this comes across...
Lockhart.
Mrs. Lockhart? Okay,
Yeah, I think so.
I know he's being kind and sweet, but also he comes across as almost sunning Kaelin a little bit. Mm-hmm. What is sunning? Sunning is when you talk to someone as if they're your son, when really they're your peer, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like Kaelin has to be sort of somewhat subconsciously picking up on this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think we all picked up on it.
Yeah, like he's talking to me like a kid, like, oh my god, like I'm his kid.
And also, I feel like there's a little bit of like, you know, I'm sure part of it, a percentage of it is actually probably genuine.
Yeah,
you know, praise for Kaelin.
I'm sure it is.
And there's also another part where it kind of feels like a sort of manipulation.
You can be a little bit too charming at times. You know what I mean? You can give too many
Like, we understand why you're doing this.
Yeah, you can be too charming. And I feel like here he might be over charming, because he even not sucks up to, but he talks to Kaelin and says, look, I'm taking you no matter what. And I know this comes across, he's putting this as like a loyalty, you know.
Like a loyalty offer.
A loyalty offer, a suggestion of loyalty. I am loyal to you. You should be loyal to me.
Yeah, but really,
the choice
it's something
is yours.
it's something that benefits him.
But it's a manipulation.
Yeah.
And although it seems open, it actually, I think Kaelin is picking up like, okay, why are you taking me to the final two? It's because you see that you can beat me so easily, you know? And this is what maybe sets him on the track of maybe Miles is the one that I should take.
So do you think like that's kind of like, so Kaelin obviously sees AJ as like a bigger threat, or do you, because I kind of feel like maybe the games have also been quite enmeshed together.
Yeah, true.
There's maybe not
too.
as much separation, whereas like
too.
say, with Miles, I feel like there's more separation between the two.
Yeah, there's that too. Multiple factors. We'll get to that when we talk about AJ's exit. So Kaelin wins, and we get this amazing moment where the three of them hug.
Oh.
This could be the new Winfield Cup.
Yeah.
You know, this is the picture of sportsmanship and bromance right here.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Okay, and also one question was like, how did Kaelin have the strength to like lift AJ up after he had just, you know, like stepped down from after he just realized he won. He went over to AJ. I think AJ was still grimacing in pain. He was lifted him up. I was like, wait, doesn't that hurt you as well?
Dude's a freak.
Yeah.
And Kaelin is quite emotional here. And I think this was another hint that he was going to cut AJ. Because although he likes Miles, I think he really loves AJ. Yeah. AJ is a lot of people's besties because he's, you know, such a good social dude. And... okay, let's get to Tribal. Should we get to Tribal? Because it's...
Yeah, let's get to Tribal.
Basically, what we have here is AJ and Miles pitching each other's game. With like, no, you're the best. And then like, no, you're the best. It got out of hand.
They both did very good pitches. I think the one thing that I thought AJ did very well was he was able to list out, I think it was like 5 or 7 qualities.
Records.
Of records that Miles had
whether they were true or not.
Yeah,
he just made them sound like they were records. He was just
and he's always been that way, like in the past when he has wanted people to kind of like shift their vote, he'll give them like say 5 reasons as to why, you know, like they should do it.
He's a PowerPoint kind of guy.
Yeah, and when you think about it, it's like, wow, there's actually 5 reasons. So I should definitely change my vote.
But some of these records were dubious. Like, you know, Miles has played the record amount of time on the bottom. how is that a statistical record? How did you record that? Is that confirmed by the... Like, you know what I mean? But he made it sound like fact, which was very convincing. But very, very interesting. These guys should have written each other's pitch votes had they got to the final two. That would have been fascinating. But they basically big up each other's games. So, like, Miles is like, AJ has played a historic game.
Yeah.
AJ is like, the Jungle Rat is a historic character. They both are upping each other's games. And I think Kaelin's in the middle of this, like, how do I choose? How do I choose? And then AJ says, decide.
With your heart.
With this thing here. Okay?
Which is another kind of like
Go
semi,
here.
like, you know, manipulative. Like,
Go
you know,
here. Go here, my friend. And we see Karen and Logan just almost get the gag bag out. They go, dude. I thought this was funny.
Yeah, I know. Well, because he knows that very much like Kaelin just like,
heart.
you know, plays from the heart. So he's just like trying to goad him into like, you know, it's like, yeah, just do what makes you feel less guilty.
I know. But like, I think Kaelin does something here that is quite revealing. He says, oh, guys, can we just have a quick chat? And he pulls aside the two guys.
I think JLP was in shock. He was like, this has never, ever happened
almost
in Survivor
to get
history.
Permission.
Yeah.
It seemed like,
Yeah,
okay? He seems like he's, I just need some... But really, it's permission. I could tell.
I think so.
That he wanted from AJ to do this move.
To do this move,
And I thought it was sweet, but it also made him look junior to the other two in terms of strategy and social hierarchy, which then hurts his perception at the game. This is the point of the game where you really need to start to make impressions on the jury. And I know I'm going to be making some criticisms towards Kaelin in the next few minutes, but this is all with love and this is all with like a view towards the gameplay. But he is the perfect human. So let me get that in as a condition before we get into these criticisms.
I don't want Kaelin to change.
He is a perfect human being, okay? So all these things that he could have done almost make him less of a sweetheart. But I think that, you know, going and pulling these two guys aside and saying, what should I do? I love you both. You know, the jury's looking at him like, oh, you're a child asking your parents for permission as to which parent you're going to take to McDonald's. You know, you're not the boss here. Those two guys are the parents. You're the child and you're asking which one. And it doesn't make you look like the strategic powerhouse or mastermind
that he says he is.
That you say you are. Because is this how you guys pitched votes to each other on the island? Like, you know, the three of you standing around and Kaelin saying, what should we do, guys? And you crying. Like, it was a beautiful scene, but I also was a little bit cringing at like, oh, Kaelin, you might be blowing it here.
Fair enough. I think so.
But we love you anyway. Don't change.
And again, like I think the things that probably make him maybe not win at Survivor are actually the things that probably propel him very, very much forward
in the real world.
Oh,
he's a winner in real life.
Yeah.
No matter how you...
He doesn't need to win Survivor.
No matter how you shake the jury villa. Okay, so let's talk about AJ.
Yeah, okay, AJ's game. So he's just got...
AJ as a final two, right?
Yeah.
What would have happened if it was AJ versus Kaelin? Okay, so the jury is Karen, Kate, Kristen, Laura, Logan, Zara, Miles, then, and Paulie. What would have happened AJ versus Kaelin?
I think AJ would still have won.
What's the vote split?
Probably the same. I mean, Kirsten will probably always vote Kaelin. I think everyone else will probably vote AJ. But that's also because he's also very good at talking. And I feel like the one thing with like jury pitches is it's not just about the game that you have. I mean, you can have like a semi-okay game, but if you're actually much better at debating than the other person, you know, there actually is a very strong chance that you could actually win. If you're able to make your points.
Exactly. Anyone can... I feel like if you get to the final two, we have seen in the past people fall over with their pitches, like say Sean, or elevate at the last second, like a Haley. Everyone thought George was going to beat Haley, but the final two pitch, how you empathize and connect with that jury, critical.
Yeah, because there are like, you know, that you can say some stuff that actually just really turn people off and be like, I was going to vote you, but now that you've said that, well, I'm going to change my mind.
Yeah. But I was thinking about this and I thought, you know, AJ versus Kaelin, AJ blows him out, 7-1. But then I thought, you know what? there is one thing that AJ has, which is a little bit of hubris. He has this sort of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, he has this swagger, this cockiness, right? Where this almost narcissistic streak that you need to be an elite poker player. You need to bet on yourself millions, right? That could have turned off some of the jury. I saw some of the things that he said during these pictures, like the Logans, the Karens, their reactions were a bit, bruh, you know what I mean? You're the greatest.
Because I think the way he always said was, I've always been in full control of the game. I was like, well, maybe, but also not necessarily.
I could see a world where he gets out there in the final jury pitch and he says,
pisses everyone off.
I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. Just give me that freaking thing. Let's go. You know, and Kaelin is my child. And it actually goes too far and pisses people off, and they go Kaelin as the sweetheart vote. I think Kaelin, maybe there's a world where he gets the loyalty and likability vote over AJ more than he does Miles. But that's just who knows, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How about AJ versus Miles?
And I think that would have been very interesting. It would have been so close though. Probably for me, I would probably still say Miles, but that's only because I feel like Miles has had the bigger, flashier moves, and that makes more of an impression. AJ is probably a little bit more behind the scenes. And secondly, Miles has actually won more idols. He also played them correctly, and also he has won an immunity challenge. I feel like with AJ's game, like it's very good, but it's not complete in the sense that it would have been good if he had managed to win one immunity.
Yeah.
And maybe had used an idol or something, you know, like an advantage correctly. Yeah. Just
He
something
played-
that is a little bit different from the rest of his game.
Yeah.
That gives him a little bit, that makes it a bit more broad.
I think AJ was fantastic at rallying votes, at making the alliances. He may not have been the one pitching the strategies like Miles or actually leading those upsets or blindsides, but in terms of the way he handled Morgan, Kate, how he brought in Cara, and he led a lot of those alliances. So I could see in his world and in his mind why he owned this game. But also in a very similar way to Miles. But Miles was more like his alliance sidekick. I think AJ was the leader in those, which is why... And also AJ is such a great speaker too. He's very articulate. He's a very good speaker, but I think on the counterpoint, I don't know how many advocates he has on that jury. I feel like Miles' story was a little bit more sympathetic, more compelling, and more relatable.
Yeah, and
to
also
the jury.
I think because Mao kind of like focused his story on actually surviving.
Yeah.
You know, which is like the name of the game. You know, so like AJ's kind of like played it from the top.
Yeah.
You know, he was never like, you know, at the bottom.
He was taking hostages. He was doing big flashy stuff, but he was never vulnerable. And I think the way that we see later Miles's pitch, which we'll get to, is that he focused on his vulnerability, which really worked to his advantage. He played into... The difference is, I think, Miles is very aware of how he is perceived on the jury. AJ maybe a little bit less so.
Yeah.
And that maybe is why I think it goes 5-3. Miles over AJ.
Yeah, it would probably definitely have been a lot closer. So you still think that if it was AJ versus Miles would still come out?
I do. I think that would have been a fantastic two. All right, shall we get to the final bit?
Yeah, the final jury pitch, I guess. So AJ's gotten voted off. It's just Miles and Kaelin.
Great montages that showed their journey, though. I thought that was really good.
Yeah. And I think like we've always known what Miles has done. It's always been very, very front and center in what the show has shown us, but sometimes you kind of like forget what Kaelin has done as well, and you see him actually doing all these like covert moves, like leaking information, you know, being privy to a lot of like private information, which I in a way felt like I wish he had actually been able to articulate that in front of the jury. Yeah,
I thought this was always going to be the challenge, how he articulated his strategy and his gameplay, because I think he said, I'm a mastermind, I'm a strategist, I worked with these guys, I'm a strategist, But he needed to give specific examples, I think, to prove it. Because, it's enough that you say it. You say you worked with them, we know you worked with them, but when? I think he needed to say, like, Kate, I was the one that got you out, sorry. These two guys wanted to keep you, I was the one that planned that coordination. Miles, everyone was gunning for him, I'm the one that leaked to him that the vote was coming his way, I kept Miles here. these little strategic moves that I made,
Yeah, like say with
I'm the one
Logan, like, you trusted me to tell me that, you had an idol, but I actually leaked that information to AJ, and we got you, like voted out.
Yeah. There was a lot that he needed to do. I think he didn't have enough intentionality and specific examples of his strategy. He needed to bring up his specific plans and specific moves. And also, I think I've got some points here that he could have gone to. I think he should have he needed to undermine AJ and Miles. Unfortunately, he needed to turn on his besties here, I think, a little bit. He needed to point more that he used AJ rather than he was AJ's pawn. And so, even in how he killed AJ, he needed to say, like, I was never your lot. He needed to separate himself, unfortunately. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Sometimes you need to carve your own identity in as a player. And I think he needed to do that here. So he needed to even criticize AJ in order to separate his game. Like, AJ was my shield. I used him. Da-da-da. What do you think?
I think he did use that.
Yeah.
But I think he just was not able to articulate it enough.
Yeah. It's tough. You're talking in front of
it's
8 people. It's nerve-wracking.
I would
you
find
have to
that the
pitch
most
your entire
horrifying
game.
thing on Earth,
He wasn't the one that compiled the votes, even though he said that he played the perfect strategy game. So, yeah, it was always tough. But let's get to Miles, who did a great job, I thought, of acknowledging his weaknesses. And this is his way, I thought, of saying sorry and acknowledging his faults to the jury.
Yeah, and he like he said, he had actually many missteps. Like, he had a lot of home runs, but the fact that you are actually able to, look back on your journey, like, look at where you went wrong. Like, the jury wants to know not what you did right, but what you did wrong.
Yeah.
Just as a way of, like, acknowledging what they
Their
have to go
gameplay.
through.
Yeah, acknowledging and the way they perceive you too. Rather than saying I played the perfect game, you sometimes, this is the new style of jury pitching, I think, to say, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, but I learned from you. I needed to, to involve them in the process of your learning.
Like, lift up their ego a little bit. Like, like how David, like, I think David did this probably the best.
Yeah, he's very flattering.
In his jury pitch,
But Miles, in all, he took risks. He played from the bottom. He played an exciting, complete game. It was interesting, and he survived.
He survived, And I think that was the main point of him, was that he actually survived. And this really good point where he said, like, to the jury, like, some of you understand what it's like to play from the bottom, like, but most of you actually stayed there for, like, a couple of days. I stayed there for, like, half the way, which is, like, 30 days. It's very, very hard. I actually had to survive.
Yeah, I thought that was a very emotionally connecting point. How he said the emotional toil of being at the bottom is hard. And you can only imagine being called bottom boy and dish pig for days on end, sitting at the end of the bunker, at the very end of the shelter, being treated like crap by Jesse and Ben, having to endure that and to still rise, remarkable. And he did a good job of repeating. One of the points that Kaelin made was repeatable. My game is repeatable. Which
I thought actually was a very good point.
It was a very good point.
It is
because
a very
if
good
you
point.
do play this scenario out 100 times, I actually think Kaelin, with his immunity challenge prowess, probably gets to the final 4 or 5, 60% of the time.
Yeah.
But AJ was right. He never will win it. In any scenario, because it's like that. I think Miles did the best counter argument. It's like a poker player that plays safe and folds, but never gambles any chips. You never win enough chips to control the game. So Miles countered that argument beautifully, and I thought that was a tick for Miles.
Definitely. And I feel like with a lot of the questions, I feel like Kaelin kind of, to be honest, both of them had very, very good pitches. Kaelin was actually a lot stronger than I thought. But it was just when it came to the questions that I felt was his undoing. Because a lot of the questions that the jury asked, like, what did you not feel proud of? What would you do again? And he kind of like, well, I would still do this way. But that's actually not what, and even if he feels this way, it's not actually what the jury wants to hear. There's a difference.
It shows maybe a lack of awareness and intentionality and control of your complete game and perception of your complete game.
Yeah.
And the jury want to see that you understand all the moves that are going, an awareness of the entire chessboard. And I think that's what really gave Miles a big tick here, because he was able to say, like, I didn't play well from the top. I messed up socially. I was awkward. You guys hated me. I did a lot of social faux pas. I wish I could have done that a little bit better. I came in too hard from the beginning. I started playing too early. And that got a lot of nods from the jury.
Yeah.
And when they're nodding like that, that's like bing, ding, 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 ding. That's like a poker machine going off. I thought.
And I felt like, I think Kaelin, he probably kind of knew that, you know, like in terms of like the pitching, Miles was probably leading. So I don't think he was maybe necessarily surprised.
Well, I think Kaelin needed to just say that. He needed to, unfortunately, rather than say I played the perfect social game, he just needed to say, like, I needed to make my moves a little bit more emphatic, more intentional, and more clear.
And maybe earlier even.
And earlier. I needed to assert myself a little bit more distinctly from AJ and Miles socially. And that actually, that admission of weakness can sometimes be a strength, which is a very big lesson, I think, not just in this game, but outside as well. It's very interesting. It's like when you go to a job interview and they ask you, what's your biggest weakness? And you say,
I don't have any weakness.
Or chocolate. You know what I mean? You're better off saying, look, it's this, but I've learned to manage it like that, and da-da-da. So, yeah, Logan and Karen were the ones that asked, what would you do different? And Kaelin is like, nada. So, Miles gave the orchestral answer, because I think the orchestra started to rise when he spoke, and that's when we knew.
Yeah, you have the music, the violins, the symphony, you know, going behind. So I think it was pretty obvious that he was going to win. In terms of votes, I probably thought it was going to go all the way Miles, maybe like Kirsten, you know, like voting for Kaelin. So I think that kind of like played to expectations.
Yeah. So...
But all the while, like, you know, it's a great story. I think Miles is definitely the deserving winner of Soul Survivor. I think Kaelin did a really, really good job. So, like, you know, congratulations to him as well.
Yeah. He gave us some great moments. The soccer kicking, picking up the idol on the ground during the challenge when everyone was trying to vote him out. The winning of the last immunity, stepping through pasta during the reward challenge. Miles, you gave us some iconic moments. You were entertaining. All of the cast were entertaining, iconic, brilliant, all season long. Thank you so much for such a great season.
Yeah,
cast,
so this
crew,
has been
JLP.
a really, really good,
I really
good season. And I feel like, especially with Miles, like, you know, his journey is like so complete. There really isn't anything you could actually ever ask for. Like with him, I kind of like thought it would have been great if he won like a final kind of like an immunity challenge that would have really rounded it off. He actually did not disappoint. He won it.
Yeah. He played an entertaining, dynamic game from all aspects, like and wild too, really wild, entertaining, all over the place. We haven't seen maybe a winner come from such weird angles and diverse situations.
Diverse background too.
A diverse background. Yes, it was great. So kudos to the season. I can't wait for now. It's Survivor vs. World coming up.
Yeah, that's coming up. Like, you know, that's got a lot of very iconic players. We've got George, we've got Shawnee, we've got David.
Parvati,
Kirby
Tony, Blachos.
as well. Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting season.
So
I think
we'll
the only thing
that
I was like a little bit surprised was that there's actually less contestants, I think. So it seems like a kind of like fast track version.
Fast track season. I think. But we'll be around for that, but we're going to take a little bit of a break until then. But stay tuned on our socials. We'll keep on updating and posting.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Like, you know, no, that's it. Like, guys, thank you so much for listening to the show. This is the Recreate Reality Podcast with Michael and Teresa. You can find us on Recreate on TikTok and Instagram. That's WRECK.CREATE, where you can watch funny short clips of what we talked about. If you like what you hear, be sure to like and subscribe to our pod. It really helps us a big deal. We are extremely grateful for any support you give. We'll be back with Survivor Australia versus World. Yeah.
See you guys.
So stay tuned.
Congratulations, Miles.